July 1st already. Good
I
Lord.
know. It's a new fiscal year. We got new money in the budget now.
Yes, that is true. I woke up thinking that this is my life now.
Wow.
I know Debbie said yesterday that, it was the end of the fiscal year. It's like, I hadn't even thought about that. Shows where her brain is.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I'm sure it's on Debbie's mind.
Yeah, no kidding. Every day.
All right, we're live, Chair Pounds, and
Okay.
it's 8 o'clock,
Ready?
so we may
All right.
begin.
Well, let's get started. This is the Public Works Committee meeting, virtual meeting due to COVID-19 pandemic. First item of business, call to order and acknowledgement that the press and public have been duly notified of the meeting in accordance with the Freedom of Information Act. Appreciate everyone's flexibility for shifting our meeting by a day, so thank you for doing that. First item is approval of previous meetings minutes from our June 4th meeting. Hopefully you've had a chance to look at that, so I'll entertain a motion or changes or comments.
So moved.
Second.
Second, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Desiree, I don't think we had citizen comments. I know we have comments from the restaurant crowd that we'll talk about here in a minute, but any others that came in?
No, sir, we did not receive any comments for this
Okay.
meeting.
Great, thank you very much. All right, Donnie and Robert, y'all want to give us departmental reports? I know with Donnie, we just finished the month. You may not have your data yet, but take what you got.
Yeah, I still have not got any data from the county for garbage or the yard debris or the miscellaneous. So we'll just move on to, and also my vehicle maintenance. And I knew I had an invoice coming in. It did come in yesterday, but I did not have the finished final total, but we're going to be exactly right on budget. So we're not going to be over.
Okay, great.
So go ahead, Robert, with your, and I'm gonna mute back.
All right, thank you, Donnie.
Sure. Okay, so with drainage, we have the Wills Way drainage complete and it's operational. We just had about 3 inches of rain on the last event, and that is completely operational. There's no more flooding. Edie's has been doing ditch cleaning, pipe cleaning. I have the avenues listed where they perform that. 32nd Avenue, where we had the 3 inches of rain. We had to deploy pumps to pump that because we flooded. And then that'll just bring me to 32nd Ave and Palm Drain cleaning that we had completed by SCDOT. That was done prior to this storm. Then the resident had called after that storm that the system was clogged and not flowing. So then I had SCDOT come out and check, and Donnie and I actually walked the whole system from 32nd and Palm all the way to 34th and Waterway, and that whole system is flowing 100%. It's just the volume of rain that we had during that event just wouldn't take it, and it took some time, and eventually all drained. We also have SCDOT completed drainage swell reconstructions on 29th Avenue and 23rd and 24th on Hartnett. And then they also have completed the drainage swell at 110 Sparrow Drive also. So as far as drainage, all my outstanding drainage projects are completed. Now kind of move on to some other hot spots.
Hey, Robert, outstanding in the sense of good work, not just outstanding.
Yeah. Robert, yes.
Yeah, quick question, Robert. On Sparrow, I did get a message from one of the residents down on Sparrow, asking us definitely do something about the drainage problem they have on Sparrow. So where does this 110 Sparrow Drive? Is that in the neighborhood right around the curve right there?
Yes, that's on Duck and Sparrow. That's right on the corner. So what happened there is the swell ditch that was had kind of disappeared and filled in over time. Donnie had tried to do it previously years ago, and the homeowner was against it. And since then, there's new homeowners in there, and they were completely agreeable to do something and get that ditch, even though it was in the right of way. So we met out there, Douglas and I, with the homeowners, showed them what was going to be done. DOT came in and reconstructed that swell ditch, and it all seems to be flowing perfect now. There's nothing in that intersection. There was a system in place. It's just that swell ditch was so filled up that it wouldn't take any, it was almost leveled out before it hit the inlet. So once they did that, it's flowing good. But that is, yeah, that was probably the biggest hot spot on Duck and Sparrow.
And Rusty, is that where that resident lives? Do you know? At that corner?
Lives across the street.
I had a couple questions or points. One was at 29th in Hartnett, that block. I had gotten some feedback from a resident who lives there. They're definitely appreciative of improvements that you guys are doing, but with the opening up of one of those ditches that was really close to the road, he was concerned about people not, potentially like following, some safety concerns that somebody might not see it and not be aware of it, could either drive into it maybe, or not. He lives directly across the street from one of those openings. So I'm not sure what could be done there to make it more visible that there's now an opening that people were not aware of.
Yeah, so that was where on 29th, where there was a pipe that was in the ground.
Mhm.
I spoke to that resident where the pipe is, and they had a long-term renter that decided to fill that pipe in and then make the driveway larger. So that swell ditch was always there. It's on the county maps. It's just that, years ago, somebody filled it in, and that's what was contributing to the drainage problem there. I mean, right across the street, there was the remainder of the swell ditch that runs down. So it's kind of really just is what it is as far as backing up and having to be careful. And now, yes, that resident, I believe, has reached out also to see if they can get an encroachment permit to repipe that section, that smaller section. So if they went and did that, then they could certainly just fill back in what they did, as
Okay.
long as the opening of the pipe was there, and then there wouldn't be that ditch.
And I think this was the resident that lives across the street. So it's not on their property, but they're obviously aware that it's there and was just concerned that I think traffic might be, because of the narrow width between the opening and the actual street. I think his
Yeah.
point was, is there like just some temporary things that we could put up to show that, I don't know what, what I mean, like those boards that you could put up to just caution kind of thing.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. I mean, it's to me, it's kind of like, we've all, there's ditches all over.
Yeah.
I do agree that somebody could pull off to the side of the road, and I believe that's what, it's kind of soft over there, and then they would go into the ditch. But I can look into that for you. That's not a problem.
Thank you. And I recognize that could be a challenge. And then, so 23rd and 24th is all done? Is that
Well,
what I'm
23rd
reading?
and 24th, half of the street is done. So where we
Oh,
found the
okay.
pipe, they made the ditch there. And I actually had an on-site visit with SCDOT there to show them what I wanted done. And I told them to think about how we can get, well, it would be closer to 23rd. That's where a lot of the water is hanging up now, how we can get that water out of there. So I have to
Okay.
reach back out to him and see if he's come up with anything to alleviate that problem. But
Okay.
half the street is dry now, so we're
Yeah,
getting there.
super. Thank you. Thank you. We'll take, every step of the way. And I know with that one too, I wanted to mention that, and I think I sent this in an email to Desiree, but that the resident at the corner had some concerns, just that he had asked the DOT crew to be careful not to cut his electric fence, which they still cut his electric fence. And so I don't know, that's certainly a little bit out of our hands, but if you can just mention to them as much as they can, be proactive in letting residents know that they're doing work and checking in with them about those kinds of things.
Sure.
electric fence for the dog.
Right.
And so, and then I have a question about that 32nd Avenue area of Hartnett. Every time we drive a bike but through that block, there is one house that has a little pipe of water continuously flowing into the street. And I'm not sure if you're aware of that or if that's a problem spot that the city has sanctioned some kind of
Yeah.
fix.
Yeah, that would be the sump pump that pumps from under the house. So some houses will flood underneath, and they,
Okay.
I believe that is completely fine that they can pump to the street
Okay.
just to get that water out of there.
Okay. All right.
Susan,
Yeah.
this is Donnie. As long
Hey,
as it's
Donnie.
not chlorinated, it's legal to pump groundwater into the rights of ways,
Okay.
according to the MS4.
Well, we've been biking a lot, and every time we go by that house, we see a stream of water. So that must speak to the issues that that area is having right now. So, but thank you for all of this. This is, as usual, fantastic that we're making all this headway.
You're welcome.
Hey, Rusty, I wanted to make sure we were closed out on Sparrow. Did that answer?
Well, I missed most of that. I want to apologize, Mr. Chairman,
Sure.
because I've got a Wi-Fi issue again today, so I'm just cutting in and out, and I missed that, but I'm sure that Robert did address the spare. No need in repeating it. I can get it offline or whatever, but I know that you are addressing it, Robert, so that's great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we just move on to facilities. If there's no more questions, we just had normal preventative maintenance on our building, termite inspections. We just received the transfer switch for our generator. The generator is en route. It should be delivered shortly and installed. We have the front beach restrooms, which we, as you know, we've taken those over, and that has been working out fine. We just have, yeah, so then also what we did down at the restrooms to prevent any of the most important thing of running out of toilet paper, we just had all the dual toilet paper rolls installed down there. So that should prevent any major, that's probably the most major problem you could have on the city if you run out of toilet paper. But that's been done. Let's see. And then we just have the landscaping. So we had the 5 palm trees installed inside the connector, installed the sod, and installed rose bushes all at the park. We have Pleasant Places that's starting. I believe they'll be on the island today and tomorrow, and they're going to finish off with the pine straw and get the Leola Park done. We also did lighting there. I don't have that on the list, but I had done some landscape lighting under the big oak tree when you enter the island.
Yeah, it looks great, Robert.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, I think that it's a nice accent down
Yep.
there.
I would agree.
And then just the usual meetings and monthly underground storage tank at the marina and Public Works, and just virtual meetings with the Isle of Palms Emergency Management Plan. And I think that's about it.
That's awesome, Robert and Donnie. Thank you guys for y'all's work as per usual. Very much appreciated. Old business, update on phase 3 drainage project and small internal projects. I know we just hit some of that. Desiree, anything else you want to add there?
Yes, so for the phase 3 drainage outfall project, 30th, 36th, and 41st, Thomas and Hutton have completed the specifications and the plans for all 3. They are permitting those projects separately. I think we talked about a couple months ago how 41st Avenue is being permitted separately because we may require some mitigation because it is outside, it's within the critical area impact threshold. So we would have to do some mitigation. So they're working on the project and getting some details and cost estimates for a mitigation project rather than paying credits for that because it's less expensive that way. And they're working on the coordination with Water and Sewer Commission to do that. We are going to coordinate a meeting with the Wild Dunes Resort to get, start talking more about the potential impacts to the golf course and, getting squared away when it comes to our drainage easements just any impacts that would be necessary to know before design is completed for that mitigation project. For the small internal drainage projects, they are just waiting on the final formal letters from DHEC and MS4. We have the OCRM critical area permit, the Army Corps permit, the SCDOT permit, and approval from Water and Sewer Commission. So we'd be ready to go for bidding as soon as we receive those letters from DHEC and the MS4 from Charleston County. We received, after we put the agenda together, we received from Thomas and Hutton a proposal for bidding assistance in construction services so that we have them overseeing the work. And it is about $6,000 for bidding assistance and $22,000 for construction services for all five projects. They have also completed a revised cost estimate of those projects to make sure that we are still within the $500,000 budget, and we are. The revised number comes at $464,800. Just for the construction and the design. That already includes the design and the work that they've already done for us to get prepared for bidding. So we would have some money left over to cover the cost of construction administration services. Douglas and I have talked about, maybe reducing the scope on the bidding side, and the city maybe handling some of that to reduce some of those costs, but we're not sure yet how complicated it might be and whether or not it's money well spent to have Thomas and Hutton just do the whole process. So we're hoping that we can get those answers ready for and the proposal ready for you all during Ways and Means later this month for consideration, so that we can get started on this. So making good progress. I mean, just as you all know, permitting tends to be a little slow and painful in some ways, but we're getting there.
It's not painful in some ways. It's painful in all ways. So what's your best guess on start date, given all that on this small project, Desiree?
I'm not sure. Douglas, do you have any thoughts on start date? We always give ourselves about 45 days between bidding and award of a contract. So if we can get, the proposal approved by the end of this month for bidding services, we'd be adding a month and a half to that.
Yeah.
And we can issue a notice to proceed by September, potentially, or August. No, September, more like September. And then they have indicated that it's probably a 4-month construction process. Douglas, am I right?
Yeah, I don't know if you, did you work in enough time for council to approve the construction? I mean, I would add.
Oh yeah, you're right.
Add a month for that. I was thinking roughly 90 days to get started, and then 4 months to get it completed from that date would be kind of my best guess.
You're right. I only added the 45 for bidding, but once we get proposals back, then we'd have to go through the approval process at that point. So that adds at least another 30, 40 days.
Yeah. And Douglas or Desiree, I mean, this seems like money well spent to have those guys involved from start to finish on this personally.
Philip, I would agree. These are smaller projects. We have, Desiree and I've kind of gone back and forth that it could go, they're small, so they could go beautifully, but sometimes they don't go beautifully, and you wish that you would have had closer, basically engineer's eyes on it from start to finish. In the grand scheme of budgeting and the cost of their proposal, I would tend to think it is probably money well spent to be safe rather than miss something.
Yeah. I mean, it's such a jigsaw puzzle, Douglas, as you well know. You just hate to have something here affect our bigger projects that are coming. Not that it would, but you just never know.
And we do have, in talking to Thomas and Hutton about the simplicity, they keep going back to the fact that there is a pretty major conflict with one of the sewer lines and our drain line and a water line. So there's going to be some kind of figuring out the jigsaw puzzle with a hole open near the sewer treatment plant. So we, for that conflict alone, it may be good insurance to just have them from start to finish.
Yeah, gotcha. Rusty or Susan, any comment around that topic?
No, I would agree that it's good to have them, a strong guiding hand in all of this that knows all the pieces.
Yeah, I mean, they're such a trusted partner. I would hate.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Rusty, go ahead. Sorry.
No, no further comment from me. I think it's a good update, good insight from Desiree and Douglas. Thank you.
Yeah, good progress.
you.
Yeah. Patience is pretty key in these projects, isn't it?
Holy smokes.
I know, right?
I mean, Douglas, think about when we first started talking about these small projects in planning commission to get
Yeah.
to, you're still 90 days from hopefully putting a shovel in the ground.
I see Donnie smirking because Desiree and I assured him it would be done by this fiscal year. So he wins the bet today.
Yes, Donnie,
Hey,
you win.
hey, I don't think that was a smirk from
Yeah,
Don.
right.
He was listening intently. Yeah.
Desiree's
Donnie Donnie does enjoy the "I told you so" every now and then.
Nice. Well, that's a great update. Thank you for that.
Thank
Desiree.
you.
Anything else on that?
No,
Okay.
that-
Next
all we
topic, 2 months ago, I guess once we finally started back from the pandemic break, we talked about collecting some data and just looking at our costs and doing some analysis on the outsourcing of garbage. And I know Desiree, Donnie, Robert have been busy the last month or two on this topic. So I don't know, Desiree, you want to?
Yes, so I'm going to pull up some slides up here so that we all can see the same thing, but I'll let Donnie sort of walk us through what he has done because he met with 2 vendors. And before we get into the numbers, I want him to explain the process that he followed and the process he did to get quotes and some information from vendors that may be able to provide those services should the city want to transition that way.
Yes, so Carolina Waste now has a contract with the city to provide all the commercial dumpsters for the city. So I contacted Sally, my contact, and her and the production manager came out to the island, rode the island, observed, and provided a quote, which is in your packet. I also contacted Republic. That's because I have the Sullivan's Island contract. I got Kiowa's contract and Somerville's contract. And Republic came out on a Tuesday and with 7 individuals and each one in their own vehicle, and they followed all of my trucks for that Tuesday route. And then they have provided an estimate as well, which is in your packet. So to get a feel for what the island does based on what we do now. And then they came back with what their breakdown, and then I tried to compile what Public Works does. And my question to the chair the first month was keeping the garbage, outsourcing garbage, but keeping yard debris and miscellaneous services the same was the question. And that was for me to determine how many vehicles I would need in the fleet. So that's how I got started. And then after meeting with Desiree and Debbie, I think a more inclusive analysis was in order. And we've tried to, but with the exception of the yard debris and miscellaneous, which they just did not have enough data. But you can see the analysis, and then I'll let Desiree get started.
Okay, thank you, Donnie. Okay, so the first thing we did was identify the true current cost of the public works operation associated with garbage and yard debris and miscellaneous. So you can see here the actual FY19 numbers, forecast 20, and then FY21 budget. And in this column right here, we separated out what could be saved should the city outsource garbage service only. This includes some assumptions that could be finessed and worked through a little bit more with more time, but it assumes that if the city outsources garbage only, the city would assume 5 CDL positions that could be eliminated, and keeping 5 for yard debris and miscellaneous. I'm sorry, 5 CDL if the city outsources garbage, and then 8 positions that could be eliminated if we outsource garbage, yard debris, and miscellaneous pickup. So those are the 2 deductions from the budgeted number. We did the same with, several, most of the line items. We, adjusted fuel, adjusted uniforms, adjusted some costs associated with mainly personnel. And we came up with a number. Why is it not scrolling? We came up with a number for a potential reduction from outsourcing garbage only of $586,000, and a potential reduction from outsourcing garbage, yard debris, and miscellaneous of $1,042,000. And then we use that as the base number to compare the cost of a private vendor providing those services to the city, and created this analysis with the information that we received from both Carolina Waste and Republic. We don't have all numbers from them. For example, from Carolina Waste, we only received what the annual per unit cost, the monthly per unit cost for garbage. And that is included here. The 144 is what would cost the city for 1 year to service and provide garbage collection for 1 unit, which would be 631 if you multiply that by the total number of units on the island, which is 4,384. So the total cost with the quote that we received from Carolina Waste for just garbage collection would be $631,296. We have requested that they provide what the cost would be for yard debris and miscellaneous, so that you all could have a full picture of total garbage operation. From Republic, we also received numbers for, I can't see this part, okay. We received the quote from Republic. Also, it's not complete. They only provided the total unit cost for garbage collection at $15 per unit. So $3 more than Carolina Waste. And that comes out at $911,700 for a year's worth of garbage collection. We compared the numbers with the contract for Sullivan's Island. We have their per unit cost for all of the services that they provide there, which it's all inclusive of yard debris and miscellaneous. And those numbers are included there. But interestingly, the per unit cost for from Republic for Sullivan's Island, it's $10.68, and they quoted us $15. So we don't have a whole lot of information on that differential, but they have 900 and some units versus 4,384. So that may be some of it. We also have some areas that are harder to reach. We also provide that backdoor service that I'll let Donnie explain in a little bit. But here you can see with incomplete numbers, just having numbers for garbage collection, it would cost the city relatively more to outsource versus what it currently costs the city to provide household garbage collection services of $586,000. Donnie, can you go ahead and explain the services that Public Works provides the backdoor
Sure.
service and what that includes within Waldoons and then outside of the gates?
Sure, certainly. So you can see that Debbie's got, I provided all of what we do today. The Grand Pavilion, if you don't know, they have the little white picket fence corrals with the garbage enclosures that Public Works staff has to physically go get those garbage enclosures, pull those cans out, empty them, and then put them back. And that goes for all of these that you see listed. And that is what in the industry is considered a backyard service. Some subdivisions, like what I said the other month, Kiowa does. In addition to that, there are, and I put a number, I did not get a total, I did not count inventory wise, but outside of the gates, that's those homes, Carolina Boulevard, Ocean Boulevard, some on Palm, that have corrals built and cans at the edge of the right of way where the resident or the rental company or whoever, they don't have to touch those cans. Public Works has to go and physically look in the can, even in the off season, every week, pull that can out, service it, put it back. It's approximately a 100 that have been grandfathered at one time. And I think it was back in the 90s when these garbage carts came to the island as opposed to the metal drums. It was encouraged by the city to have a corral. That's not the case today. But those cans have been grandfathered, and so we do service those cans. And I used an approximate number. I think it's about 100, even in areas in the middle of the island, and Forest Trail has some corrals left. In addition to that, there are corrals even in Waldoons that are not subdivisions. Waterway Island has several boxes where we have to go in those boxes. So it's all over the island, and there's not just contained in certain areas. And I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you, Donnie. So you can see when we look at the Republic quote, the regular service was quoted at $15 per unit per month, and the backdoor service was quoted for $30 per unit per month. So it's double for them to service those locations that Donnie just explained currently receive the backdoor service from Public Works.
And hey, Donnie, can I ask a question real quick? And not really anything to do with bid other than just all this information. So all this, set aside the outside the gate backdoor service for a second. Is there a reason we couldn't require all those facilities inside Waldoons to have dumpsters as opposed to corrals?
Well, I don't think in Grand Pavilion, you couldn't have a dumpster.
Yeah.
There are, and we have, 3 years after I became Public Works Director, Beach Club Villas, I put commercial dumpsters in. My next option, and I talked about it about 2 years ago, that I was on the verge of removing the Seagrove 95-gallon containers and putting a commercial dumpster in there. But as long as, and my thought process is, there's a cost to the city for a commercial dumpster.
Right.
And as long as I can maintain with the current level staff at no overtime and continue to service Seagrove, then I'm trying to save the city money. So, but there will be a time as these houses get bigger and the number of cans at each individual house become more and more, it becomes more difficult for my staff, as it is today, to service some of these backyard services like Seagrove. Seagrove would be the first.
Yeah.
And but there's a cost associated with the city, and I'm going to hold off as long as I can and try to save the city money as long as it's feasible without any overtime.
Got it. Thank you, Donnie. Rusty, do you have a question?
Yeah, just a couple of them. The analysis here that we're looking at, does that also include the twice per week service? trash
That is
pickup?
correct.
Yes, it does.
Yes.
All right,
It's the same as we are today. Everything,
Right.
13 weeks of twice a week.
okay. And another thing I just want to make note of, because I've been living out here for quite a while, and I will say this, and this is a testimony to Donnie and his crew, but this hurricane, I noticed on note 1 where it talks about hurricane storm debris.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I would agree that we clean up a lot more rapidly here around this
Mhm.
island than many other places when there's a tropical storm that moves through, and that's real
Mhm.
credit to Donnie and his team.
Mhm.
And I would hate to see a situation, number one, where we have a serious hurricane, but when and if we do, I'd hate to see a lot of just debris lying around for weeks like it does in some other places.
Agree. Totally agree. Susan, any reaction or comment?
Yeah, I just want to make sure I'm understanding, they would be an increase in cost if we outsourced versus is according to what I'm looking at.
Correct.
The graphic is throwing me a little bit,
Yeah,
but
You're
um,
correct. Yeah.
So
okay.
yeah, you're correct.
Okay.
If you look at the current IOP garbage cost on this,
Yeah.
the second section where it says potential service garbage only, the
Okay.
current cost for the city is 586,000. And that isn't, that
Mhm.
assumes a continued level of service for yard debris and miscellaneous, and the staff
Mhm.
staff and equipment necessary to maintain those services.
Okay.
But then it would be for $44,000 more with just using
Carolina.
Waste
Mhm.
Coast, and then 325,000 using the Republic quote.
Okay.
And
And then
Su-
if we factored in Republic with the garbage and yard and debris, there might be a little bit of reclaiming, but we'd still be in the whole more than $300,000 with them. So the net would be, is the net on,
To be determined. Yeah, we don't have outsourcing costs for yard debris miscellaneous from either
oh, okay.
company at this
Okay.
point.
Okay.
That would be additional costs.
Correct.
Okay.
It would be added to that.
Well,
Yeah.
I think if we're talking about additional cost for outsourcing, it's a no-brainer to me to stick with, the level of service. And I think we're largely very happy with what the service that we get with our current public works setup. So I don't see any reason to, look too much further if we're saying that it would actually be more expensive to outsource. So,
Yeah,
so
I
I,
mean, yeah, I would not disagree. And I think, if you look at the Republic Sullivan's Island contract, Susan, to me, even that's a push, when you look at our
Mhm.
cost compared to where that much
Yeah.
lower bid was. I would, Donnie, thank you guys for doing this first.
Mhm.
I know it's
Sure.
been some work, but I just think it's, incumbent upon us to periodically review our
Mhm.
costs and services and
Yes.
everything else. I mean, I'd love to go ahead and fill out this sheet if we can,
Mhm.
Desiree, to get, just to see where their yard debris, I'm where Rusty is. If you look at our island compared to some of our neighbors, when there is a storm, I mean, we're clean in nanoseconds compared to weeks and months from
Mhm.
some of the
Yeah.
other places. So I echo Rusty's comments wholeheartedly. So I think, this is great analysis to start with. Appreciate everybody's work on it so far. I'd love to just kind of complete it
Mhm.
and make sure we're drawing the right conclusion with all facts in front of us. So this is awesome. I appreciate you guys working on it.
Yeah, we were hoping that we would be able to fill it in for today, but unfortunately they have not responded to our multiple requests for quotes. They're certainly busy nowadays, but
Yeah.
we'll continue to request those numbers and fill it in and send it over to all of you.
Yeah.
Super.
Donnie, anything surprise you out of the work so far?
No.
And I know Debbie has to do some type of report
Mhm.
annually that does similar work like this. So yeah, I think it's kind of where she has done that previously, Donnie. I would agree with you. So good effort. Thank you guys very much again for your work, and we'll keep this in front of us maybe one more month, Desiree.
Mhm.
If we get final numbers, just to have it.
Absolutely.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. New business, first item, discussion of timeline to reinstate plastic ban on IOP businesses. I know Ron had reached out to a number of the restaurant folks and had a file attached to the meeting notice with all of that feedback. Desiree, anything you want to level set there or ground set before we have discussion?
Sure. Yes, we reached out to all the businesses, like you said, and a handful of them responded with some of their concerns and requests for the committee's consideration related to maintaining or keeping the waiver on the plastic ban regulations on businesses on the island. Some of the concerns were, mainly cost. It's more expensive to purchase these recyclable products, and nowadays a lot of their business has migrated into to-go orders and delivery orders, which would require a different type of container that they probably weren't used to using often before. So most of their concerns or requests were for the city to maintain the plastic ban waiver for them, and potentially even extend it through the fall so that they may continue to do what they can to maintain their businesses healthy, economically, and also in terms of public safety. Folks do prefer to have a single-use item even when dining in. So I think, I'm very grateful for some of the comments that were submitted, very thorough. They really took their time to explain some of the hardships that they have been, had to endure. And, if there's any particular questions, I'd be happy to answer. I knew that Councilmember Smith wanted to have this conversation at the committee level on whether or not the city could either rescind that regulation earlier than currently. It will expire August 24th, because as you all know, on the 23rd of June, council extended the state of emergency and those waivers to the businesses for 61 more days. So unless council acts earlier, then those will be in place until then.
And so, yeah, I'll just jump in here if that's all right. I actually wanted this discussion, and also asked Desiree to reach out to the businesses to get their feedback, because I did want to hear from them. At the outset, I talked to one of the reasons that I supported having a temporary what's the right word? A temporary repeal, or how do you phrase that, Desiree?
I say waiver.
Waiver.
But
Temporary waiver. After talking with Bobby Simmons at Acme, because the way I know that he has a heart for the environment, and that he has taken several measures through his business to, even before we enacted some of these measures previously, to try and do the right thing. So when he told me that there were supply chain issues at the outset of the pandemic for him, it made sense for us to do the waiver. And I do appreciate, he's one of the ones that has sent us a very lengthy comment, because he's clearly still trying to do the right thing, but facing issues. And so I appreciate that very much. I think it's worth noting that the city of Charleston went ahead and did not renew their waiver. So as of July 1st, they from their view, supply chain issues are no longer a factor in terms of getting the more environmentally friendly packaging that is needed, or that they were asking for. They're not seeing that. So businesses are in the city of Charleston are having to abide by their plastic packaging restrictions once again, starting today. given I'm open to letting ours stand and for the next 60 days or until August 23rd or 24th, because largely because of the input that Bobby Simmons gave about the needs that they have and the challenges that they're facing. But I think I'm very skeptical about continuing it past then. Because there are a lot of costs that come with pollution um, to public health and to tourism. And so I think we need to remember that as well. And, we can't let this continue on for too long because the environment is extremely valuable in many ways to us. And I don't think we can, leave that door open for too long. So that's and I would also, maybe the committee can at least encourage the businesses to do what they can, recognizing their challenges, but still strive for meeting some of the expectations that we'd set in the past.
Rusty, do you have a comment?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, well, I definitely agree with extending this. And quite honestly, I mean, I think we need to revisit it within the 60, 61 days that we've extended it. But I'm in a place where with our businesses on the island here, they are doing everything they can do with the dining experience and the to-go orders, that sort of thing. And I would really hate to see us put that ban back in place too early, that increase their cost to the point that it's tough for them to do business. I mean, they're already struggling enough, and I know that they have to maintain the inventory. And I was talking to one of the respondents that we had here a couple of weeks ago, and he was also talking about, well, when we do go back to the plastic ban, he said, I hope that we have a grace period here where we can, use up the supplies we already have on hand. And I think what the city of Charleston agreed to do verbally anyway, because I listened to their meeting week or so ago, is they agreed to let businesses run through that inventory before they started strictly imposing that ban. That's what I heard. Now, whether or not that's happening or not, who knows? And I really not real concerned about the city of Charleston right now. I'm more concerned about Isle of Palms. So I think they made good points, made excellent points on the feedback that we got. And the biodegradable product, when you try to go with that, if it's hot, it gets soggy, food leaks, and I understand the possible effects on the environment down the road. But quite honestly, I think we need to give our businesses more time to not only move through the inventory they got, but be able to do business as they're doing right now, and put this aside during the crisis that we have. So I'm definitely in favor of, not shortening the 61-day period that we already have in place. And I'm very open down the road to extending it even to October 1st or later if we have to. Thank you.
Thank you, Rusty. And I would, just my 2 cents, I would totally agree with Rusty, your comment. I mean, I love the environment myself personally, but I just think we got to be open to these voices that are coming in from multiple business owners, not just one, that's given us feedback on using inventory. I think there are still supply chain issues with these restaurants and other businesses. So I absolutely do not think we need to shorten it, and would see where we are in a month or two, and we may need to extend. So Desiree, I don't know if we need action on this in any way, or just
one other thing, Mr. Chair, and also is noted on at least that the really good analysis we got here. The costs are really going up some of these suppliers too. So I mean, it's rising dramatically. Of course, that's a cost of doing business. That gets passed on to the customer, but also the owner operator has to eat a lot of that as well. No pun intended. So we need to take that into consideration too. That's just an extra cost of doing business if we push this too fast and make them go back to the ban. Thanks.
Yeah, I would agree. Desiree.
No, I would just wanted to add that currently the prohibition on the use of these products on the beach still stands. That was not included in the exception of the emergency ordinance. So, using the styrofoam and plastic bags and plastic straws on the beach is still prohibited and will remain prohibited. We will, once we start approaching August 24th, then it'll be up before City Council whether to extend the state of emergency, depending on where we are at that point and whether or not that waiver and that exception would be extended as part of any action from council at that time. So no action is required at this moment.
Okay,
Well,
thank you.
And could I just chime in for a second? And as far as if we could have, I know we've had a lot of things to message about in the past 3 months as far as the beach goes. And I'm glad that we have at points also pointed out that we still have the plastics ban on the beach. But if that messaging could continue to make sure that the public is aware, because on the flip side, we have so much beach traffic right now. And as a result, obviously, we have a lot of trash. I know. And we're just starting to get the cleanup crew going again and asking people to do trash sweeps more on their own. But I am worried about the level of trash that's probably getting into the ocean and into our environment because of this spike in visitors. So that, and maybe if we could just plan to address this in the committee in August, revisit and see where we are then. Again, I don't want to leave this window open too long and have the progress that we made, fall back on that. So,
Yeah.
but thank you for the discussion. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I mean, I just think these are uncharted times. We just got to be sensitive to our business community.
Agree.
Last item on new business is discussion of drainage impacts of new construction and lot elevation on neighboring properties. I know we had some email traffic from residents on this. Desiree or Douglas, I'm not sure who wants to take this one.
So we included this on the agenda as a request from Councilmember Smith, who wanted to talk about whether there were additional things and actions, mitigating actions that the city could consider and entertain to address potential drainage impacts on new construction. Like you said, the city has received some complaints and concerns from different homeowners about their perception or the reality that they are now feeling impacted by new construction next to them. So I asked Douglas to come in and maybe share a little bit of the chronology from the Planning Commission, who looked at this issue for about a year or two and came up with some recommendations. Some have been already adopted when it comes to the lot size and the pervious versus non-pervious. So Douglas, if you don't mind kind of walking us through a little bit of history, and if there are any actions or recommendations that weren't entertained and weren't discussed back then that should be brought into the forefront one more time.
Okay, to start, I would just, I guess, go through kind of historically what's happened with construction and grading lots, filling lots. If you go back maybe 10, 15 years ago, prior to that, there was no law regulating what somebody could do in terms of grading. So you could go put a mountain on your lot, and the city would not be involved with that. But if you were to do something on your lot and it caused damage to your neighbor's lot, those neighbors would have to work that out in civil court. So that owner would basically be bound by what he could do without damaging his property in the eyes of a civil court. That was the way it's always been until probably 15 years ago. And 15 years ago, we changed the code to say, if you are going to fill your lot, you have to provide a drainage plan done by a drainage professional. That was the kind of law of the land for I guess, 12 or 13 years, where you had a professional develop the plan, sign off that if you grade according to that plan, it's not going to adversely impact your neighbors. But again, that was only done if you brought fill in. So here more recently in the last 2 or 3 years, the Planning Commission obviously has been focusing on the issue of drainage, and there have been a lot of complaints. And it's been a hot topic for everybody. So those ordinances were tightened additionally to say, regardless of whether or not you bring in fill, you have to provide a drainage plan if you disturb more than 625 square feet. So that got us to a point where every project that was sizable, really a pool is about a small pool you can get away without doing a drainage plan, but a regular pool, you generally trigger over that 625. So all new houses, all new pool, or any big pool, any large scale moving of earth or development now gets a drainage plan. And again, that plan shows the old topography, the new topography, and then they have to write a certification statement on it saying, if you work in accordance to this plan, you will not adversely impact your neighbors. So that's really the status of where we've landed in terms of what we require. Generally, I would say that, there are, I think that it works pretty well. We do still get, obviously, a lot of complaints, as Robert knows. I mean, there's complaints all over the island about drainage. It is not unusual for somebody to see work going on next to them and immediately think that, that project is adversely impacting them. And quite honestly, if it is adversely impacting them, they do still have the ability to deal with it the way it historically has been dealt with, and that is between the two neighbors working it out, without the city being the kind of intermediator there. So that's kind of where we are. I don't know if anybody has an interest in getting into the details of here. Most recently, we received complaints about the construction at 408 Carolina. If you would like to go over those specific details, I'd be happy to do that. Or if you have questions kind of globally about how we handle drainage, I could also answer those questions.
I guess if you want to go through an abridged version of 408 Carolina, because I know the council members have been receiving correspondence about it, it might be beneficial for everybody.
Okay, let me, so I tell you what, let me share, maybe I can share a screen of, I don't know if you can see that.
Yep.
Yep, got it.
Mm-hmm.
That is the natural topography. And if you look at the little blue pin, that is 406 Carolina Boulevard, which is Mr. Bond's property.
Mm-hmm.
And next door to him to the right on your screen is 408 Carolina. And what you see there is the orange and darker orange is a dune system. That's a high, and that dune system is as high as 18 feet to the left of your screen. You can see that, which is about as high as you get on the Isle of Palms. That's extremely high property. It then goes back, and if you see the green kind of at the back of those properties, that is a low point. So that goes from 18 feet down to 8 feet at the back of the property. So it's a very large, steep incline, and really at the road, and this is on a different graphic, but on the road, Carolina Boulevard there is about 14 feet, and it goes to about 9 feet. All of that to say that this is a historical drainage pattern where the water from Carolina Boulevard is going down a very steep slope towards the back of those properties. And that has not, it's always been that way. That has not changed. But there has always been a lot of water running over those properties. Let me change. So let's see if I can get this one up. Is that showing a
Mhm.
drainage plan now?
Yes.
So that is before they start construction, they have to do a drainage plan, and that is the drainage plan for that property that was provided. And it's probably not very clear what these numbers are, but basically he has put his house elevation at the same elevation as the road, and then he has provided a very shallow, and it's only about a 3-inch, what we call a swale, basically a depression on his side of the property line that channels that water that naturally is flowing from Carolina back to the back. It's channeled beside his house. So that's the plan. It was done by a civil engineer. In the top right corner, I know that's not showing up, but in the top right corner is the professional's opinion that if you do this work in accordance with this plan, it will not hurt the neighboring property. We then, in this case, because there was some dispute about it, we had a third party go out and analyze the work that had actually been done. So he took the plan that was approved. He then went out into the field to look at the way it was done, to verify that indeed it was done correctly, and that it would not adversely, that fill would not or that change in topography would not adversely impact the neighbor. So that's what this document is. This is an additional civil engineer who went out and checked the situation. So that kind of puts us, the city, at a point where there's not, beyond that, there's not much that we could do to solve the problem of the neighbors at 408 Carolina. And I don't really know, what code would be in effect. And, I don't know what else we really could do. If the sky were the limit on regulation, I don't know how that property at 408 could do really any more than what they've done. So we're obviously very flat. The smallest thing can change, how water flows off of your property. And sometimes it could be down to just where grass has grown and where it hasn't, but just the smallest thing can make a fairly sizable difference. And those things just have to be kind of resolved. And usually a lot of times that just happens between neighbors.
Yeah. I mean, Douglas, from the city's viewpoint, thank you for sharing all that. I mean, I feel like we've kind of gone above and beyond by bringing in a third party to take a look.
Well, we had the contractor do that. We didn't pay for that, but yes, we required that he go an additional step, really for everybody's protection. And it behooves him when a situation like that comes up to basically get a third party's opinion on the matter. So he wasn't resistant to doing it. Kind of when you come to these situations and everybody, when you basically have just a difference of opinion in terms of what's going on with stormwater, that helps everybody to have a third unbiased opinion in this.
And are there other potential factors at play beyond just lot coverage in itself? Douglas, I know I've heard you mention this before, of the idea of taking in the whole of the plan, including, the building itself and how that can impact drainage. Can you talk a little bit about that? I mean, are there?
And that is what the most recent change in the ordinances was intended to address, that
Okay.
it used to be that the plan was only triggered by elevating your lot. Now the plan is triggered by any disturbance of 625 square feet or more. So
Hmm.
that change has been made to kind of cover that. I would say that there was a hole in the ordinance whereby you could build a whole new house, but if you didn't bring in truckloads of fill, you didn't have to do a drainage plan. I
Mhm.
think we were kind of left short in that situation, but that hole has been closed and the code doesn't allow that anymore.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I will tell you so the lot coverage went from 40%. It has been 40% forever. It recently went to 35, as you all will know. Then it went to 30 for properties served by a septic system. And additionally, all hardscaping has to be pervious, regardless. So, you could have a house barely covering anything, and if they go to put a driveway in, it has to be pervious. So the city has been very proactive in ratcheting down factors that would impact stormwater here recently.
Yeah,
Are,
I agree.
are there other communities that have some kind of place to go for when there's a dispute like this? That the beyond directing people to a civil court, um, are other municipalities creating any setup to help mediate these kinds of issues?
I don't think so, Susan, not that I'm aware of. And we have, there is a lot in the news about what various communities are doing. The city of Charleston is very active with stormwater, and I think that they actually have a new stormwater manual that becomes effective today. Also, the town of Mount Pleasant has had a lot of changes, but as far as I can tell, and I'm trying to verify this through the sources, but it appears that all of their regulations, well, not all, but most of their regulations are dealing with subdivision level drainage. When you're getting a development approved, they are ratcheting down considerably how you do that.
Yeah,
I
not
don't,
neighbor to neighbor, Douglas, but
right.
yeah.
I don't think anybody is doing anything more than the Isle of Palms is doing on a lot to lot basis.
Hmm.
I believe, and we're very similar to the way Sullivan's Island handles them. We're pretty much doing the same thing. I think that our two communities, I don't think anybody is doing anything more than our two communities on it.
That's really good to know. I mean, that we're doing what we can and being proactive. I guess in the end, it's still frustrating for the homeowner who winds up with suddenly seems to wind up with horrible drainage issues that they didn't have before the person next door started to make changes. So I can definitely see the frustration, and unfortunately you hear it from multiple sources as you talk to neighbors on the island of issues that they ran into once a home either became new construction or expanded construction. So it's too bad that we can't do something more. But it sounds like we're doing a lot more compared to other communities.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Susan. And I do, I recognize that when there was a tiny little house, and sometimes they're tiny little houses down in holes, and sometimes those tiny houses have had water that they've held on that lot for decades. And it, when that ceases to be that way anymore, it does change things. And so it is, it's kind of creates this constant flux of where the water might go. And again, Robert and I will go look at a tiny berm that builds up in the street, and it's only 3 inches high, but it has the effect of damming up a puddle that then crests into an area that you've never had water. So it is really down to millimeters make a difference. And
Mhm.
you just inevitably have some issues that come from that when you have new construction next to you. So I agree. I hear it, and I know that it is true that when someone builds next to you, it does create differences frequently. But I don't know that we can stop them from doing that.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
thank you for your wisdom. And I think it's worth pointing out that our chair of our committee was on the planning commission during, I think, a lot of this conversation. So he,
Yeah, for good or for bad, Susan.
and that I'm glad that we took the steps that we have taken in recent years. So thank you for the conversation.
Yeah, and I think, Susan, I agree. That was Douglas. Thank you for doing that. I feel like the city has really done a lot of really good work in this area, not just recently, but in the last 10 years or so. And I feel like we're in a good spot. To your point, Douglas, you can't regulate everything. So some things just have to be worked out, unfortunately, sometimes in a court. But Desiree, anything to add there? You good? Okay. Our last item, next meeting is Thursday, August 6th at 8 a.m. Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
Second, all those in favor. Thank you, Robert, Donnie, as
Thank you.
always. Great work. Thank you guys so much. And
Take care.
All right.
Thanks.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.